So I will take the remaining time to maybe try to rain on the parade and provoke a little in terms of how we get from here to there. A book was recently published, fairly recently in the United States, called So Much Reform, So Little Change, looking about all these educational reforms that were really brought in with all this fanfare and how they keep on failing. And again, each one of you has a great vision and how to get from here to there, but I want to kind of look at some of the criticisms. So Wendy, I'll start with you. I often have a chance to meet with Teach for America graduates, and it seems like a great program for their resumes, and they all benefit from that in getting into consulting and investment banking once they get out of the schools. But they don't stay in the schools, and the program has not substantially contributed to the teaching workforce. Those who stay are a drop in the bucket, and most don't stay. So in the last 2 years, as I continue to speak to these groups, what I began to hear is, yes, we know we're not staying as teachers, but we're going to be great policymakers on education because we know what happens in the classroom. And I must say that some of that rings to me like covering up for failure. The program has not succeeded, so let's say that we're creating great policymakers in education, and then we can still feel great about engaging in a program that doesn't really change education, but gets us into McKinsey. So,
okay. I love the directness in the culture in Israel. It's beautiful. And I love the opportunity to set the record straight. So we have 30,000 Teach for America alumni. 3% are working in the corporate world. 3%. 63% are working in education, and another 20% are working full-time in jobs that relate directly to either schools or low-income communities. So maybe they did in fact go back to med school, but they're working on public health issues in urban and rural communities. Maybe they're working in legal services, maybe they're working in policy, but with a focus on education. So in fact, we have taken a whole bunch of very unsuspecting folks who think, let me do this for 2 years. They do it actually, if you start talking to them, and you know many of them, it sounds like they do it because they want to make a difference. There's much easier ways to pad a resume than to go teach as part of Teach for America. So they come in thinking they're just doing this for 2 years, but it's such a transformative experience for them. And it changes every single decision they make thereafter. It changes their priorities, and as you could tell from those statistics, it changes their career trajectories. The real proof, as you say, is this changing anything? Is anything changing? And I can just say, I mean, Teach for America has been placing a steady stream of folks in some communities now for 20 years. And this is a long-term strategy. We never said this is going to fix things overnight. We said we're going to cultivate a leadership force that over time is going to make a meaningful difference. So the real test is what's happening in those communities. Are we in fact making progress, or is this, as you say, just a drop in the bucket that changes nothing? And I could tell you, I mean, we could talk about New York, which I've already talked about. Let's talk about New Orleans. You know, New Orleans is very much in the discussion. A lot of these people who claim nothing's working somehow they point to New Orleans. In New Orleans, which I think our country would look at as the case study of a community that has not been able to provide kids with the chance to pursue the American dream, okay? We started placing teachers there 20 years ago, and I will tell you, 8th graders in our country, in this city, were at the 2nd grade level. You'd visit schools and you would think, this cannot be our country, like a land of equal opportunity. You know, and it seemed like nothing would change this, right? But in the last 6 years, we have seen really, really meaningful change. More than twice as many kids today are meeting the state standards. The graduation rate has gone from 54%, so 54% of the kids even graduating from high school, to 78%. The graduation rate in New Orleans, African-American, high-poverty student population, is higher than the graduation rate in our national average, even though graduation standards have been increased. The college readiness rate of those who do graduate has gone from 25% to 40% despite an increase in the college readiness rate. This is a community that has a long way to go, but it is the fastest improving education system in our country today. So what caused the change? What did it? Go to New Orleans and spend some time there, and you can answer the question for yourself, but I'll say probably lots of different things. But if you take out the Teach for America alumni, you take away 40% of the school principals, hundreds of the teachers, between the core members and the alumni who are still teaching, they're reaching about half the kids as teachers. You take away the people who run the organizations that have engineered the change, the district leadership, the state commissioner of education. These are folks who, again, came in thinking, let me do this for 2 years, not because I want to pad a resume, but because I want to make a real difference for kids who just could never leave, and who've become part of a system not to just perpetuate the status quo, but to actually say, we got to change this. We can do this in our lifetime. These people are on a mission to say, we're going to prove that all the kids in New Orleans have the same potential as the kids in high-income communities, and they are on a path. I mean, they believe they'll pull it off in the next 7 years. We'll see.
Thank you. Just a second. Get better answers when you ask tough questions. Daphne, some of the criticisms that have been put forward to the program is that it will create this kind of unified teaching, just like in business school, everyone learns Harvard case studies, no matter which business school in the world you go to, and they all churn out graduates who think the same, and then we have a global crisis. So some of the criticism was about getting star teachers, about a unified education that will look the same to everyone, and that at the end of the day, this program is useful for the motivated, self-motivated kids, but those are few and far between, and therefore, this is not really the future of education.
Okay, so those are two questions. I'll take them in turn. Certainly, there's going to be a certain consolidation around in a given discipline. I wouldn't think one, but I would say maybe 10, 15, 20 versions of an Econ 1 course, in the same way that there are 10 or 15 Econ 1 textbooks that people are learning from, and in the same way that, you know, you could levy the same criticism about textbooks as a consolidation of human scholarship around a relatively small set of resources that are used very globally. However, at the same time, and I think perhaps unlike textbooks, this is also going to give rise to a very long tail. So let me use journalism as an example here. It's true that one of the things that happened when technology overtook the world of journalism, putting many newspapers out of business, so to speak, and remaining with a relatively smaller number of, you know, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and so on. At the same time, it also gave rise to bloggers, people who, in the ordinary course of events, if you were a specialist on Asian pottery or internet technology in a small town somewhere, you would not have had an audience in your local constituency for a column at your local newspaper about this topic. But now, because of each of those bloggers having access to a worldwide audience, all of a sudden they have an audience of a few tens of thousands of people, which is enough to sustain them. So in some ways, yes, there will be a narrowing of the funnel, but at the same time, it'll open up opportunities for a richness of experiences that most people, like those people in those small towns who wanted to learn about Asian pottery, would never have had that opportunity. Now, because of the internet, the bloggers are available to them. And I think the same thing will happen with courses. We will see a wealth of courses that did not have enough of an audience at the local institution that the instructor resides in, but now will be made available to the world at large. And so I think it'll actually broaden the spectrum because of the long tail. The second, the self-motivated learner. So, you know, I think that it's true that for the person sitting alone in their living room with the computer in front of them, they do need to be more self-motivated than most in order to successfully complete an online course. And I think that the human touch is an essential component for a large number of students? Is it 90%, which was the number that Wendy gave? My number is 85%. I don't know. It's something that I think we'll have to measure. But I think human touch can come in many different ways, and it's not just the traditional college education that makes this possible. So let me tell you one example story that came to us about a month or so ago, of a group of people that I think feel a lot like Wendy's target audience in New Orleans. These are a group of primarily women in their 40s and 50s who live in a very poor part of Ohio, who were brought together by a wonderful woman called Sharon Watkins. Only one of them has a college degree. They're all unemployed or employed in very low-paying jobs. And they came together, 10 of them. They picked a business school class from a Darden Business School at the University of Virginia, top 10 ranked business school in the US, and they took the class together. Now, Sharon Watkins is not a business professional. She's not an MBA. She just facilitated the interaction. She brought them together to the point that they were engaged and retained and had that kind of, conversation about the material. And the interesting part of this is, of those 10 women who started the course, most of whom are minorities, by the way, 9 of them finished it, and 6 of them passed an MBA level final exam in this course. So you don't need to have necessarily an expert teacher. You just need to have somebody who's passionate and committed. And there's a lot of these people around, I think, I hope.
So book club's out, Coursera club's in, huh? Dan, I'm personally a huge fan of what you have to say about the fact that we need to educate basic things that people have forgotten, manners, how to behave in society, how to treat each other. But I want to take what you said on education to take it to, for example, the preschool science. Your enthusiasm on that is very clear. And yet, perhaps as kindergarten teachers hear you, they say to themselves, where is he living? I don't have a place to change diapers to kids who are entering preschool still using diapers. I am barely getting paid and not even getting paid for extra hours that I'm giving. He wants me now to show clips about science to kids. I have parents yelling at me morning, day, and night. So how do you kind of deal with your vision and what kindergarten teachers and most teachers have to deal with day to day?
Okay, let me put the facts in front of a good story like yours. This is what I thought when I proposed the program, that no kindergarten children will want to take it, and they will say what you just said. That didn't happen. In fact, in Haifa, we offered the class to about 250 kindergarten teachers. This is the number of kindergartens that we have in Haifa, municipal ones. They were willing to tear each other's hair off in order to get into the first pilot. And only 60 of them could get in. And the rest had to wait. And they were very envious of them. Everybody wanted to be in. To my and your surprise, everybody wanted to be in. What you just said, we don't talk about diapers, we talk about 5-year-olds. They don't do that in diapers now. But, I have 10 grandchildren, and I have all ages of them. I have 2 that are still. But anyway, so 5-year-olds are wonderful children. They can count, many of them can read, they know, so they are ready to be taught, and the teachers are ready to teach. The problem was that the teachers did not have enough background to become science teachers. And this is why I would like to now make those educational clips so that they can show it to the children and discuss it in the classroom. They will have some good material to talk about.
Thank you. Professor Lawrence, there seems to be a growing intellectual trend, not just in the United States, that says that education and educational loans are the next subprime disaster. People are paying money for an overvalued asset. We're going to have students who will have to pay debts throughout their lives, and college education will no longer translate into higher fees or higher salaries and the ability to pay for it. And therefore, people should just get out of higher education and go back to a time when they started working after high school.
Well, I wondered what my question was going to be when I heard what the others had. So I too get to say, let me put it in context or correct the record. There's much that's been written about the overbloated loans and the market bubble that's about to burst, and in fact, much of that is actually just based on bad data. Let me use my university as an example. As I said, 2/3 of the students at Brandeis are on some kind of financial aid. Of those students at Brandeis who take out loans, the average total debt after 4 years of undergraduate education, I should take a poll and see how people do on this. Over 4 years, the average debt of students graduating with debt is about $28,000 US. Now, I don't mean to minimize $28,000. That's a serious amount of money to take out as a loan. But I think I can make a pretty persuasive case that that is a very good investment if amortized over 4 years of education. And actually, the proper way to amortize it is over 30 to 40 years of a career, in which case it's a very good investment. It's a good. I can do this, by the way, just by costing it out. If you look just in terms of the numbers for the moment, in terms of in the United States, the numbers I know best, unemployment rates overall, among high school graduates and among college graduates, it's precisely what you would think, although probably even more dramatic than you would think. Our overall unemployment rate is in the mid-7s, flirting with 8%. It's come down a little bit. Among college graduates, it's less than 3%. That's just on that sort of a crude calculation. In terms of earning capacity, there's a direct correlation between college graduates and earning capacity. But that's just the utilitarian argument. Then on top of that, you have a whole set of values that not only make it possible to make a living, but to make a life that come out of an undergraduate education of the kind that we're talking about, that certainly make that kind of an investment an appropriate investment. And then in terms of the societal value, we've been talking about ethics and morals in terms of the life of the individual. I think maybe we have undersold the impact it has on the society. We're not just training students for careers, we're training citizens. If we have citizens of democracies who are supposed to be trying to make some kind of informed decisions about social policy, about issues of environmental policy, about global warming and the like, I think they're going to need literacy in scientific and computational issues to be able to function as citizens. So the democracy needs that. So for all of those type of reasons, I think this kind of an investment is one that is certainly worth making. Having said all that, the cost issues are certainly ones that we all take very seriously. And for the first time, you have universities like ours talking about serious ways of going into consortia with other universities to save costs in certain ways. I think the online delivery of certain kinds of information makes it possible for us to save costs. So I think you certainly will see with most universities in the States, the increase in tuition will level off because it simply will have to for market reasons, but not to the point that it's not a good that can justify its cost.
Thank you. And Janet, I want to ask you in your corporate hat. There seems to be, Microsoft, there seems to be a tendency to ask corporations and corporate leaders to tell us what they have to say about educational reform. The man who made the money with Microsoft is often consulted on what to do in education, speaks at conferences, and yet there seems to be repeated failures from corporations entering into education, maybe also the importing of business mentality into education, maybe introduce more competition, maybe pay teachers for better results. What is your response to the critique that the entry of corporations and corporate leaders into educational policy has done more harm than good for education?
Well, I cannot speak specifically about Microsoft corporate policy on education, but I can speak about IT companies throughout the United States, throughout the world, including Microsoft, very, very concerned about the next generation students, making sure that they are trained for the future, what the jobs are going to be, what the skills are going to be expected of these students. And so you do find people like Bill Gates advocating the importance of computing in education at the K through 12 level, and the importance more generally of STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. And you find many, many spokespeople from industry making an argument for these are the skills that the next generation need, understanding how to evaluate, make judgments and so on in terms of political decisions on climate change, for instance. You need to understand the science, the technology, the engineering, and mathematics. So I think you do have important corporate spokesmen who truly advocate the need for higher education and the kinds of skills. I also wanted to, can I answer, other questions that were asked? I mean, I wanted to come in a partial defense to the question that you challenged Wendy with regarding this idealistic program, Teach for All. I think that's a little unfair to criticize the outcome of Teach for All when you look at just the numbers. I think you have to look at the entire societal way, at least in the United States, that teachers are, in terms of the role of the teachers. I think there are two additional issues besides the remuneration the question that came up. One is respect for the profession. In the Asian culture, for instance, teachers are revered. People dream to be a teacher. And the teacher-student relationship that one develops lasts a lifetime. And this is something you don't see so much in the Western culture, but you definitely see it in the Asian culture. And in fact, it is not about money. It is about this very special student-teacher relationship. And so, certainly in the United States, I think the teaching profession and teachers do not gain the respect or do not have the respect that they deserve. That's one thing. The other is that you might have an idealistic, you might have a teacher come out from this idealistic program who really wants to go and teach in not even a low-income neighborhood, just a regular old neighborhood. But you'll find that there are a lot of constraints on what that person can teach because of all these rules and regulations and curricula design and evaluations and tests, and all of a sudden, the teacher can't even teach. So we need to let the teachers teach. So I think it's a little unfair to just simplistically criticize Teach for All and other such programs because students are attracted. They're at that age, they're very idealistic. But when they come out and actually try it out, then they get a little jaded or more cynical because they're actually in the real world.
Thank you very much. And especially thank you for ending on these two notes. I think they were particularly important about the future of education, still going back to the basics of letting teachers teach, giving them the respect, not just talking the talk, but creating a whole system that throughout conveys that respect by learning from teachers, by extracting their knowledge and expertise and using it for policy making and for transferring it to other teachers. So I want to thank all of you for your work in education, for your vision, for your perseverance, and you have certainly impressed and convinced me that not only do you have the vision, but you have thought very hard and deep about the challenges that you're facing and what it takes to get from here to tomorrow. So thank you very much.